The year 1881 was a turning point, a watershed moment in Jewish history. People who lived then did not know, but in retrospect, we know. Because in this year, Tsar Alexander II was assassinated, and I'm sure that no one here can guess who was blamed for the murder. As a result, there were pogroms all over Russia and Poland that resulted in two things. One was the establishment of Chibat Zion, which was the precursor of the Zionist movement, and the other was a mass migration of almost 2 million people to America. Here is the fascinating thing. Less than 150 years later, over 90% of all the Jews in the world live in these two places, in Israel and in America, in the Promised Land and in the Golden Land. Of course, there were some other turning point years, the Holocaust, 1967. And I strongly believe that October 7th, 2023 is one of these years. It caused some things, it clarified some things to us, and I think that the Jewish community in Israel and outside of Israel will not be the same. For almost 2,000 years, there was a description of where the Jews are. One place was Israel, and the other place was exile. Everywhere else was called exile. And exile was perceived as a negative thing, as a punishment. Jews say in their prayers, "Mipnei chatoteinu galinu me'artzenu, v'itpazarnu mibein ha'omot." Because of our sins, we were exiled from our land and were spread all over the nations. But with the beginning of the Zionist movement, at least some looked at exile and actually started to use a different name, diaspora, which is not negative, to say, no, it's not necessarily. The places outside of Israel, the diaspora is not necessarily negative. Actually, we need both. They were still talking in the late 1800s, say we need Israel and we need the diaspora. One of them, Echad Ha'am, even had a beautiful image. He described the Jewish people as a human body, where the heart is Israel. He called it the spiritual center, and the limbs are all the Jewish communities around the world. And the idea was that a body without a heart cannot survive, but a heart without other parts of the body also cannot survive. So we need each other. But then we had the Holocaust, and as I started, the Jews now practically live in only two places. And this year we learned a lot about the importance of the relationship between two centers of Jews. Instead of a human body that I think is not a relevant image anymore, I want to use a different one that is based on an old midrash. So there is an old midrash from about 1800 years ago. Rabbi Simeon Bar Yochai described a palace built on two ships. Can we see the picture? And he says that in order for the palace to be stable, to survive, you need each one of these ships to be anchored, but you also need the connections between the ships to be secure. And I think that this is a brilliant description of where we are today. One ship is Israel. The other ship is the Jewish community here in North America. and the palace is the Jewish people. As long as the ships are anchored and stable and well connected to each other, we flourish, we do well. But if one ship starts moving around us, and if the bars, the metal bars that connect these ships are not strong enough, the palace can crumble and fall. Today I want to focus on the people, the Jewish people who live here in America, and their connection, our connection to the Jewish people, specifically to Israel. And the image that describes it the best, in my opinion, I want you now to shift to another festival, to Passover. Open the Haggadah, and one of the most beautiful parts there is the story of the 4 sons, or the 4 children of the Haggadah. Remember, the wise one, the wicked one, the simple one, and the one who doesn't know how to ask. I don't think that these titles are correct, but I will use them nonetheless, because it's easier. And I believe that we here, each one of us is one of these 4, and then I'll say something else of these children. Who is the wise child? The wise child is the one who knows a lot about Judaism, about Jewish history, about Zionism, about the state of Israel. He has it intellectually, and he also loves Israel in his kishkes, in his guts. He has this intellectual knowledge and visceral love of Israel. This is one of them. The second one is also knowledgeable. He knows Jewish history, he knows Israel. He also loves Israel, but this child finds a contradiction between her values as a Jew and what's happening in Israel. And we saw it this year clearer than any other time in the past. Let me give you an example of this child. So a few months ago, I read an amazing article written by Stephen Bartell. You never heard of him. Last year, he was a senior at Princeton. His major was mathematics. Not a stupid guy. He was also the student president of Princeton Center of Jewish Life and the leader of Koach, which is Princeton's conservative minyan. Obviously very Jewishly knowledgeable and involved. And he begins his article on October 7th. It was Simchat Torah, the happiest day in any synagogue, and his role as the head of Koach of the conservative minyan was to arrange services later on the day where we dance with the Torah and celebrate. But how can you celebrate when you just heard that 1,200 Jews were murdered and hundreds were kidnapped? And they decided at Princeton to try to find some balance, you know. Simchat Torah is still there. That's what the calendars show, but the heart was aching and crying, but they did it. So that's the beginning of the article. But then he continues, and I'm going to read it in his words. As the initial attack on October 7 became a longer war, one which continues to shatter communities across both Israel and Gaza, I felt deeply conflicted between my support of the state of Israel and my broader concerns about violence, injustice, and the loss of any human life. When I've expressed deep concerns for the loss of innocent Gazans' lives, my Jewish loved ones have remarked that I've been brainwashed or somehow lost touch with my Jewish values. As a Jew, I take immense pride in our religious tradition of passionate yet loving disagreement. I've learned that my connection to Israel, my prayers for its security and longevity, and my appreciation of its culture and history do not contradict my criticism of its government and military's action, my concern for innocent Gazan lives, and my hope for lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. My assertion that all human lives should be protected is not contradicted by my hope that the hostages held in Gaza are returned home immediately. As a college student, as a math nerd, and most importantly, as a Jew, I find my power in refusing to be boxed in by oversimplified, combative ways of thinking. So this is the second child. This child has made many of us uncomfortable, maybe even angry. These were the children we saw wearing a yarmulke, a tali. They were celebrating Passover Seder at the pro-Palestinian encampment. But my friends, these are our children. You know what's the best thing about this child? He shows up. She is at the table. We should argue with them. Oh, I would love to argue with them. I completely disagree with them. I want to tell them that it's really easy to hold some opinions when you live here so secure. It's a privilege. You know, there is a sort of a joke that says that the secret, or one of the secrets for American success is ocean, ocean, Canada, Mexico. These are borders, quiet borders. Do you know the borders of the state of Israel? Should I start from the south? Gaza with Hamas, Egypt, Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon with Hezbollah. And you know how tiny Israel is. Okay, so we have to take it into consideration. We want it to be Switzerland, but it's very hard to achieve. There are many things I want to tell him or her, but still I love them and I respect them, and the worst thing we can do is losing them. Because if we kick them out, if we throw them away from our table, it's our loss. And these people are knowledgeable and they feel it and they show up. The third child, and again, it's not only children, it's all of us. It's the simple one, the one who knows very little about Jewish history, about Israel, about Zionism, but has the love. He has nachas whenever he hears Israel. He will tell you about all these startup companies like Waze. He will marvel at the strength of the Israeli military. He will wear a t-shirt with the name of his college written in Hebrew. A lot of love, a lot of passion, but not a lot of knowledge. And the fourth child, well, he comes for the brisket. He doesn't know much. He doesn't feel much, but still shows up. But you know what's the real tragedy? It's the child that does not appear at the Agada. It's the fifth child. It's the child that doesn't show up at all. Just take a moment and think about your children, your friends, your grandchildren who just don't care. Completely do not care. They don't show up. They don't come to Passover. They don't come to Rosh Hashanah. They're just gone. And there are so many of them. I don't really know what to do with them, but I know what to do with the four who do show up. We should embrace all of them, and we should work really hard to elevate both their knowledge of Judaism and their love of the Jewish people. And I think that the knowledge, and as we saw it this year, is so important. Because so many Jewish college students didn't know how to argue. When they heard all these theories about colonialism and how they just did not have the knowledge to debate. And there are super smart people. But when it comes to Jewish knowledge, where they are at the bat or bar mitzvah level. And we cannot afford it anymore. And it was very clear this year. And it's not that just the children. It's their parents and it's their grandparents. There is a beautiful old saying that says, if you tell your children that they should study Torah, you will have children who tell their children to study Torah. But if you want your children to study Torah, you must study Torah with them. I think that for too many years we told our children, I want you to be Jewish, to have a strong Jewish identity. It's not enough. We'll do here as much as we can. Just after the high holidays, we'll start 2 classes. One for adults, and then for high school children, to teach them where they were coming from. I spoke about it last night. To teach them about Jewish history, about our connection to the land, about what Zionism is, and how to answer those who tell you what Zionism is and lie to you. We need the intellectual knowledge. We must have it. It's crucial. And I believe that the more we know, the more we feel. Our love will grow as a result of it. I invite you to educate yourself as much as you can, but seriously educate yourself. The way that you educate yourself about anything else that is important to you. And we will help as much as we can with you and with the young people. You saw how beautifully they read from the Torah? The same way they should know their roots, their history. It is well established that the only way for a culture, for a religion to continue is for one generation to receive the culture from the previous generation and then to be obligated to transmit it to the next generation. We like to say ledor vador, from generation to generation. But saying it and singing it is not enough. We have to be serious about it. We have to be passionate about it. Because we need to strengthen the ship that is the American Jewish community in order to support the ship that is Israel. I have another sermon for Israel as well. Don't think that they're off the hook. But today I focus on us. Because only when these 2 ships are strong and stable, Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, will remain strong and stable and will be able to survive any storm. Shana Tova.